B, hope you have the book, because, oh boy, do we have a video for you today. Last time, if I recall, I believe we were in your comfort zone. We talked about draw cards, and it didn't go very well. So how you feeling?
My comfort zone, aka my bias, my inability to separate the pure love of drawing cards from whether something is good or bad. What a stupid, irrelevant question. Of course drawing cards is good. Of course it's joyful. It doesn't matter if the card gets played in competitive events, okay? Anyway, I've got the book, but I don't think it matters.
Honestly, you could probably throw it out the window because today we're going to be definitely getting you out of your comfort zone. I got the inspiration for this actually from you, as a matter of fact. You talked about Yu-Gi-Oh! 2 and how Yu-Gi-Oh! Now is so far detached and removed from old Yu-Gi-Oh! And so I thought it would be fun to show you some newer Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards, and you have to tell me if you think that these cards are actually legal or not for competitive play, or you think at any point that these cards have been banned throughout Yu-Gi-Oh!'s history. Sound like a plan, buddy? Sound fun?
They're new, right?
These are new-ish, but they are cards that would be played today or do see play today.
Easy.
I will give you
not banned. They never ban the new ones.
I guess we'll see.
Easy.
I will say not all of these cards were just released like this year or anything, and I will say that some of these cards are banned or have been banned historically, depending on the card itself. So, like I said, for the most part, the theme is all these cards have been played recently. So keep that in mind as we go through this. I tried to pick some that are fairly easy to understand and are generic enough to evaluate in a vacuum. So let's start you off with your first card.
Easy to understand. That's what you're going to tell me right before we do this? Okay. What the hell is this thing? Like Neon Genesis Evangelion vibes all over the place. Holy cow. Kashtira Fenrir. Attack and defense are 2400. Level 7 Psychic. Okay. If you control no monsters, you can special summon this card from your hand. You can only use each of the following effects of this card once per turn. During your main phase, you can add one Kashtira monster from your deck to your hand. When this card declares an attack, or if your opponent activates a monster effect, except during the damage step, you can target one face-up card your opponent controls and banish it face down.
What do you think?
I mean, piece by piece, you know, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Let's dissect this. There's a lot going on. None of it sounds particularly bad for the controller.
Welcome to Yu-Gi-Oh, my friend. Welcome to Yu-Gi-Oh.
Sounds like there's no cost, no drawback, and no problems.
What's it cost?
Anyway, you can use once per turn. You can summon this if you control no monsters. So, assuming when in your hand, it's just your first play. So you don't have to tribute it or nothing.
You can tribute it, but you don't have
you can,
to.
but yeah, you wouldn't want to, because you can special summon as much as you want. It doesn't even cost as your summon.
Correct. Now, to be fair, if you have monsters, you can't special summon it. So, like, in a 1% circumstance where you control two things to tribute summon it, I would say, like, it has happened. But for the most part, yes, you are just going to special summon this. I will help you out there.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like a problem. During your main phase, you can add one monster from your deck to hand. So you tutor for whatever a Kashtira thing is. Can it tutor for another copy of itself?
Does it say it can't?
I don't know what a Kashtira monster is. Is it a type? Because this doesn't have the Kashtira type anywhere on it. Does it just mean in the title?
It means in the title, yes.
Okay.
So that's one thing that's unique about Yu-Gi-Oh! Is that the actual names of the cards are part of like the active game text. So when we get into more archetype-focused strategies, such as Kashtira, for instance, in your game, right, you guys talk about things in terms of like colors or guilds or things like that, and it's like red aggro or blue control. In Yu-Gi-Oh, we have like, oh, I'm playing Kashtira, or I'm playing like Kashtira plus other archetype. That's how we sort of like divide like our decks. So you would be able to search any other Kashtira named monster with this card. Yes.
Yay. And itself. You know,
And
if this turns out to be good, why not have 3 of them?
Yeah, why not?
That's a great deal. Okay, when this card declares an attack, or if they activate a monster effect except during damage step, you can target a face-up card. So if a card is face down, me and the Yu-Gi-Oh! Combat system will never get along. It will never make sense in my brain. So we have to do this over and over. So if I am attacking and there's a face down card, when does it flip face up? And when it flips face up, can you then use this effect before damage? Or is that what that line about during the damage step means?
I think that's a good question. Yes. So how it works is when you declare the attack with Kashtira Fenrir, that would activate on what we call attack declaration. That would be before a face down monster would be flipped face up. Face down monsters are flipped face up during the damage step, so you wouldn't be able to do it in that window. So basically, if you were to attack a face down monster, you could activate Fenrir to banish something else face up, and then the attack would presumably continue to kill the face down monster.
And what does it mean, banish it face down?
So,
does that
you know,
mean
exile.
It just yeah, okay, yes. I'm trying to figure out. That does mean it leaves the field, right? That you don't just turn it to defense position? Okay.
No, so banishing is exile. I think you know that by this point. Banishing face down is a different sort of mechanic that I would say is probably unique to Yu-Gi-Oh! You've mentioned how when cards are exiled in Magic, like, they're gone. Like, they are absolutely, like, 99.9% of the time not coming back. In Yu-Gi-Oh!, the banish pile is kind of like a third hand, depending on the type of deck that you're playing. Our banish doesn't necessarily mean that the cards are gone permanently. It's just another zone that cards can enter and leave. I will say it's hardest to get cards from the banish pile versus, like, the graveyard, but it's not impossible, and some decks are designed that way.
How many hands and decks do you guys need? Now, are you that bored? Oh my God.
Banishing face down is also another mechanic entirely. This is newer to Yu-Gi-Oh! 2, if you will. Something that's banished face down is probably your equivalent of actual exile, where there is like 0 chance that card is coming back. There are some cards that can interact with like banished face down cards, but those are very few and far between. So for the purposes of this, when something's banished face down, let's just say it's gone for good.
So this is just all upside.
Yeah,
nothing
great, huh?
bad about any of this.
Isn't Yu-Gi-Oh! Great? No cost, all upside? Sounds like your kind of game.
The only way in like Yu-Gi-Oh! 1 that this would be even potentially bad would be if having a monster on the field was just asking too much, you know? I mean, isn't this just a stupid card? Isn't this just stupidly busted?
Is it? I
How
don't know.
on earth do you guys... See, that's the only other thing I can say is it's like, is this just a meta thing because everything else is so much more busted, and you're going to somehow tell me that something that comes down, attacks, removes something else, and tutors for more of it or something related to it that probably synergizes with it, that you can play for free, not even as a normal summon, but a special summon if you have nothing else on the field, you're going to tell me that's too slow or something like that. Like you meted this as the very first one to just absolutely brain rot me. Well,
now
whatever.
You're getting it. Now you're getting it.
No, this card, like, what the hell? This is just 100% upside, and it's hard to even envision a game where, like, this is fun, where you can just keep getting this. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Like, what are we even doing here?
But was it too good? Is too much upside? Was it banned? I don't know. That's why maybe it's too good. Maybe it's too much upside.
I can't imagine in the card game world that I live in, a card that just like removes anything is basically free and then goes and gets more of itself or something better for your situation over and over and over again. I don't know how it couldn't at least be restricted, because just the fetch itself just sounds lame. It sounds like a stupid game. But is this card actually tame compared to the other cards? And this is the thing that keeps everything from running everything over. Maybe you need 3 banish effects in one one card to keep a game actually go more than 3 turns ever. Then this thing has a weird role. And maybe there is a downside to not controlling another monster that is actually hard to manage. I don't think so. It sounds to me like you can just ram your monsters into other things, and it sounds to me like this is similar to like you removing the board is a very normal thing. Passing to your opponent with a board is a very bad thing. So I'm guessing you play this free 99% of the time, which makes this whole thing stupid. Would it be banned? Should it be banned? I mean, yeah. There's only a few different ways to be busted. You're suppressing other creature decks. You're tutoring up things. Even if it only tutors itself, you get a redundant, lame play pattern. And if it tutors other more busted things, it's even worse. I mean, we're starting out. So I feel like it had to at least get restricted. Is it fine enough for banning? I don't know. But what the hell? Ban it. Ban this stupid card.
Final answer?
Yeah. Let's go.
This card's legal.
Yeah, I had a feeling.
At 3. In your defense, I will say this. I've told you before that the Asian territories have their own ban list, and we have our own ban list. In the Asian territories, it actually is banned.
See,
so
I'm right.
You're not right, because we go based off of the TCG ban list for these videos.
That's not, no.
I'll give you a half point. How about that? I'll give you a half point.
The question has never been, is this banned on
It's
XYZ
always
region?
It's always based off the TCG ban list.
You say, is it banned? You show up and you're like, well, is it banned? I don't know. Maybe it's banned somewhere, and that is a loophole, my friend.
The problem is, if we went based off of that, like every one of these videos would be just thrown out the window, because we also have the Master Duel ban
like
list,
this
right?
idea. This is a great idea. No, let's continue down this path. That's a great idea. I think I was right way more than you think.
I think Fenrir was restricted in Master Duel. I think it's at 1 in Master Duel, so it's literally all over the place. But let me give you context here. Fenrir is nuts. This card is cracked. The thing about Fenrir is it's all upside. But were you ever a gamer? Were you ever a gamer growing up? Like, did you ever play like video games hardcore or no?
Is this not gaming?
I mean like digital video. Like, were you like an FPS guy? Anything like that?
Look, man. Look, I'm the guy who dad got mad. He's like, if you played the actual basketball half as much as you play that NBA Live 95, you would be a professional basketball player. So yeah, I definitely did stuff. Okay. Counter-Strike was my FPS.
Okay, so the reason I'm asking is because if you ever played Modern Warfare 2, the first Call of Duty from 2009, Modern Warfare 2, because now there's a couple of these. That game, everything was overpowered and somehow everything was balanced. That's a really good way to look at Yu-Gi-Oh! 2, is that everything is batshit crazy, but somehow, because everything's batshit crazy, somehow the game balances itself out. And that's like one of the reasons why people love this game. Going first, Fenrir is just a phenomenal card to start with, because you remember the episode with hand traps. We do have a way to interact and slow the opponent down. So if you start with a Fenrir and your opponent hand traps you, you could potentially like immediately use Fenrir to just banish stuff that they put out onto the field. It gets another copy of itself, so like you immediately get a +1 on advantage by playing it if they don't have anything to stop that. Just a great card all around. Going second, this card is actually just insane, because you can just play it into an opponent's board, and honestly, Fenrir sometimes can just solo an opponent if they don't have a good answer to it, just because it does so much for a singular card. 2400's a really good attack stat. The fact that it just banishes stuff, like you said, it's all upside. And I thought this would be a good card to set the tone for the rest of the video, to see what it is that you have to contend with.
Does it get played in every deck?
No, which might blow your mind. I will say it saw a lot of play at this exact moment. No, but like historically, it would either be played as a 3-of in a lot of decks, either in the main board or in the sideboard. Sometimes decks wouldn't want to main deck it, but if they knew they were going to go second, they would sideboard it in when they knew their opponent was going to choose to go first, because it's such a strong going second card that it was always like almost optimal to sideboard it in, if that makes sense. But there was a time where every deck was playing 3 of this card.
It's fine.
It's fine.
That's fine.
All right.
Okay.
Going well. We're going well.
Let's go.
Next card.
Let's go.
Next card.
Raigeki is a spell, and it says destroy all monsters your opponent controls. Oh, this card's great. Hell yeah.
They can destroy the Fenrir, see?
And then they play another one for free. So it's balanced.
Exactly.
It's fine. How is this a problem? No, this is just honest card. It's not an like in MTG, it's not an instant. You have to play it on your turn.
This is a sorcery speed effect, yes.
Yeah.
But it's a one-sided board wipe. I'm not sure if Magic has
is.
one-sided board wipes.
Oh, we got them. They cost like 7 mana. This costs nothing.
Yep.
Yeah, and Magic setting up a board and then like blowing everything that your opponents control up is a very expensive proposition that works out pretty well in Commander and is very difficult to pull off in other formats and often just not done for that reason. Spot removal's much more played because of that. This, it's Yu-Gi-Oh! I would say that what you're probably doing is passing is just trying to always like clear opponent's stuff and then do your thing. I mean, it's a pretty awesome card. It hits even the face down things and then you just attack them. But you say Modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Is hand traps, it's instants. I mean, I'm guessing this card is legal and people don't even play it as much as they could. Because like it doesn't solve if they're just gonna pop off and do like a ton of damage to you, an insane amount of things on their turn. It's kind of balanced by the fact that nothing is balanced. It's
precisely.
Balanced.
Now you're getting it. Now you're getting it.
Yeah, it's balanced by the fact that you have to play it on your turn. So everything that had enters effects, and I do remember from a previous video that we talked about that in Modern Yu-Gi-Oh! That everything like comes with all this value, and now I've had a taste of what's legal. It's like playing this after your opponent played whatever our first card was, Fenrir, and it already banished something and fetched a copy of itself. Meaningless. Like you're just trying not to die. Maybe you'll get, and you hopefully hit some damage and get some damage through to them, but then it sounds like they play hand traps. Everybody plays instant speed hand traps. Everybody plays interaction for free. So like that is on them. I'm guessing this card is fine.
Final answer?
Yeah.
So Raigeki is totally fine. This card is legal at 3, but would you believe if I told you this is one of the first cards ever printed in Yu-Gi-Oh?
Really?
Yeah, it was in the very first set.
This is an old one.
This is an old one. I wanted to show you this.
Why didn't you show me this before?
Because I wanted to show you this I felt I didn't find a proper video to want to incorporate Raigeki. But yeah, this card was actually banned for several years just because a one-sided board wipe with no downside was just way too good for the game. I believe it was around 2015, I want to say, they actually limited it to a singular copy. And it got played, but funny enough, not played as much as you think, just because there were so many cards at this point that had effects that triggered when they went to the graveyard, or just like things that like Raigeki, yeah, it wiped the board, but like it didn't really get full value anymore because everything just like replaced itself, or it kind of like broke even a lot of the time. So they eventually moved it to 3, actually a couple years ago. I think it was in 2021, 2022. It came to 3 copies, and people were kind of like, is this okay? This should just be a testament to the speed of the game and how crazy it is. But this card does see play. It will see play typically in side decks a lot of the time. Again, like going second if people know that they have to contend with whatever nonsense their opponent might play. They might bring in multiple copies of this out of the sideboard. Sometimes they'll main deck it, but one of the values of this card is that it doesn't have a once per turn clause because it's such an old card. So it's a one-sided board wipe that if you have multiple copies, if your opponent has a way to like protect from one, you can fire another, and maybe that's enough to actually clear the board. So it actually does see play as a result of that. Again, not like the craziest card ever, but again, the fact that we can have a zero-cost one-sided board wipe in our game at max copies and it's okay, should just tell you the power level that we're dealing with in Yu-Gi-Oh! 2, as you call it.
Whee! That's great. I love it.
It's awesome.
Oh,
it's awesome.
It's
All right,
nice.
let's show you a trap card.
Dimensional Barrier Trap card. Declare one monster card type. That can be Ritual, Fusion, Synchro, XYZ, or Pendulum.
We haven't gotten to those other ones, so don't worry about it as much.
Are these all going to be videos?
Potentially. Just for the purposes of this. For the purposes of this, think anything from the extra deck. That would be the easiest way.
God. Okay. For the rest of this turn, neither player can special summon monsters of the declared type. Also, negate the effects of all monsters of that type while they are on the field. You can only activate one dimensional barrier per turn. Declare one monster card type. Yep. Obviously, the one that your opponent is probably going to lean into with their deck. And then...
And you know about fusions and synchros at this point. You know those cards are cracked.
Yeah, I guess I need some timing ideas of when one would want to trap with this when one would declare it. Like, can they start doing a fusion summon, for example, and then you reveal this and they threw away their 2 pieces and got nothing?
Good question. Good question. So I'll help clarify that. In the instance of fusion summoning, if you recall, fusion summoning, you need to have like 2 or more things, and you have to activate some sort of fusion spell card to conduct the summon. With that, when your opponent activates the fusion card to fuse them together, typically it's a spell card, you could, in response, chain Dimensional Barrier, and that would make that fusion card not be able to resolve. So they actually would lose that card. It would go to the graveyard because they're not allowed to conduct the fusion summon. In the instance of, let's say, a synchro summon, if you recall with synchro summoning, you need a tuner and a non-tuner monster. With this, there's no like card activating in order to start the summoning process. So what you would do with Dimensional Barrier is if you see your opponent has a tuner and a non-tuner out, before they have priority again to conduct that summon, you would activate Dimensional Barrier and call Synchro, and now they're not allowed to Synchro summon for the rest of the turn. So depending on the type of summoning mechanic, the timing is sort of different for when you would want to activate Dimensional Barrier, if that makes sense. But there are ways to do it in response or prior to the opponent bringing out the things that they want to bring out, if that's what you're asking.
How angry did people get about this? I'm guessing
Good question, CGP. Good question.
I'm guessing there is like a setup where either you can blow them out or just lock them out, and there's nothing useful they can do, in which case this is closer to like Time Walk in MTG, which is like, well, their turn is burned, and now I get another turn of doing all the gross stuff I do, right?
Sure.
When does this go away?
End of the turn.
So obviously you want to do it on their turn most likely. It seems like a nice safe guardrail to toxic behavior. The problem is, I feel like this game is being built around toxic behavior. So I'm actually having alarm bells that this could be one of the things that makes people not want to play.
Okay.
I'm getting little alarm bells that this is the kind of thing that was designed just to stop the one thing, but then the thing became the thing that everybody wanted to do, and that then they didn't, and then people got like very negative about Dimensional Barrier.
Interesting.
And the idea of somebody having this for 2 turns in a row was probably just game over if it had as strong an effect on the game you think it would appear. I think the biggest thing that I don't understand, if a deck is built to use these extra deck abilities as a major part of their strategy, how much can they pivot from that if they had to? Can they pivot at all?
That's a good question. I will give you a general rule of thumb. Typically, most strategies are built around one of these extra deck mechanics, and they may have a supplemental secondary mechanic that may come up in like fringe instances. So as an example, let's say there's a deck that is predominantly a fusion summoning based deck. Maybe because of the way that deck is designed, they also have like 1 or 2 synchro monsters that also might come up, but aren't like integral to that deck's main game plan, if that makes sense. Because remember, the extra deck is also a toolbox of options that you have at your disposal. So I hope that helps clarify with your knowledge of the game.
A bit. It does sound like my suspicions that
it's hard to pivot for most decks.
Yeah, yes. This is very often your turn is wrecked. Your deck will not do the thing you came to do when this
I would say
is
generally
played.
That's true. Yes.
And I think that does set off alarm bells because, like I said, if this were just one kind of combo strategy among some archetypes that you could play, if this extra deck strategy was its own niche within Yu-Gi-Oh! But I am getting the impression that it's kind of taken over Yu-Gi-Oh, quite frankly. So when I see Dimensional Barrier, I see a you don't get to play card, and players don't like that. And the idea of getting them back-to-back turned like with this, is probably just GG. This strikes me as a card that might have been at least restricted. It does seem like a restrictable card. Where it becomes a bannable card is probably where just getting locked out for one turn is often game over. And in that case, even hitting the one copy feels so absurdly bad. Or it just takes up that one spot like we've talked about in the past in every deck. Why would you not run it? If it is literally an opponent does nothing on their turn, why would you not run it? Everybody would run it. Why wouldn't you run it? Maybe the best answer to a dimensional barrier is another dimensional barrier. I could see that also being a reason why they keep it legal if they think that is fine. But I can't see them keeping it legal forever. I just, like, it takes up too much spots for too much time. And if it has the impact we think, it's just, it's too many deck spots for too long. They want to sell you new cards, right? If you tell me that this one is not restricted or banned, I'm going to say for now. But I'll say that this one got banned.
Final answer?
Yeah.
People want this card banned, but it is legal, unfortunately.
For now.
I knew you were going to say it. So I think everything you actually... All your evaluations were pretty spot on with this card. This card's actually a bit older. I think it came out like 2017-ish, I want to say. So it's still relatively new, but in the grand scheme of things, it's a bit older. But this card, even back when it was first printed, this was like a $80 to $100 card on release because there had never been like an effect this strong, and just a very, very solid card all around. And it kind of plays out exactly like you say. It basically turns into like this turn skip sort of card that's very frustrating to play against because your opponent can do some things and then they set dimensional barrier and then you start to do your thing, they flip dimensional barrier, and now you kind of just have to pass your turn unless you have any sort of way to defend yourself, whether it's hand traps or real trap cards. That's why some people would actually play real trap cards to have like a fighting chance on the crackback. But even now, this card actually sees play. This card has arguably gotten better over time because now there's ways to search this card directly from the deck, which is insane. And that makes it all the more better because now it's like you don't have to rely on drawing it. There's actually more ways to access it, which makes it kind of more toxic. There used to be another card that was really effective at countering it, but I think that card's banned now, so much for that, unfortunately. And yeah, people just, it's a very, very frustrating card to play against. It's kind of one of those things that people talk about that, like, they kind of, like, wish it was banned, but at the same time, it's kind of like an unnecessary evil at the same time to, like, stop some decks that are just, like, completely off the rail. I don't know. It's kind of up in the air, but this is a very divisive card, to say the least. But I would say your evaluation was correct.
Does every deck play it?
No. It's dependent on the metagame and, like, what decks are good at any given moment, because some decks will fold to this card and other decks don't care about this card.
Oh, okay. So it's not all of Yu-Gi-Oh! Okay.
Correct. I will say on release, this card was incredibly popular, but even then, there were still decks that didn't care about this card in the slightest, just because of the way that they played. Like, maybe it's a deck that doesn't really use the extra deck. That does happen every once in a while. And so, it is format dependent, but when there are decks that do lose to this card, everyone will play 3 of it, because it is just that strong. It's really good. All right, let's go back to monsters. You had so much fun with Fenrir. I can't wait to see what you think about this guy.
Bystial? It doesn't get better. Druiswurm.
There we go. Good job.
Okay, this is a level 6er, 2,500 attack, 2,000 defense. Dragon. Dark monster.
Everyone loves dragons. This guy looks cool too.
Yeah, dragons are hype. Dragons are so cool. They would never ban a dragon.
Wait till you read the effect.
Okay. You can target one light or dark monster in either graveyard and banish it. And if you do, special summon this card from your hand. Oh, I see. You summon this by getting rid of something from either graveyard.
Yep.
It has to be a light or a dark. Okay.
Has to be a light or a dark. Yep.
This is a quick effect. If your opponent controls a monster. This is a quick effect if your opponent controls a monster. Okay. If this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, you can target one special summoned monster your opponent controls and send it to the graveyard. You can only use each effect of this once per turn.
Isn't everything being free so much fun?
It's pretty fun. Pretty fun. It's pretty fun sometimes. Tactically, this is interesting.
What are you thinking?
So we'll start by presuming that light and dark monsters end up in graveyards sometimes. That seems.
Well, you know that they're probably
fine.
the 2 most popular types. So.
And you at least probably you can control what's in your deck, and it is either graveyard. Obviously, you'd prefer it was the opponent. All right, and then you can special summon this as a quick effect if your opponent controls a monster. So even as early as turn 1, if the opponent puts out a monster and there's somehow also a monster in the graveyard, maybe they tribute summoned or did something, I don't know, you can do this on even their turn 1, your turn 0. I
Correct.
guess.
So it is a bit of a hand trap in a way. Yes.
Yeah. You can target one special summon monster and send it to the graveyard. So it also, in a way, destroys something. It is another piece of removal on a critter. So graveyard interaction, board interaction, 2,500 attack, probably fine.
How would this be in Magic? Would this just be like one of the most busted cards they've ever printed?
0 mana. Let's see. Cast for free if you exile a
white or a
relevant
black
card from a
card.
graveyard. Yep, from a graveyard. Might be a little tricky in Magic because you do have to get the colored card to the graveyard, which is a lot harder. Most of the things that require you to like discard a card or get the card in the graveyard on an early turn, exile. But there are things that like you can picture, Magic players can picture like this with Grief, right? You exile a black card, you play Grief, you steal a card from your opponent, this goes to the graveyard, now you can exile the Grief or the card that went to the opponent's graveyard. Like that would be insane. And then you have, I don't know what this is the equivalent of in Magic, like a 5/5 that also enters and blows something else up. Yeah, that'd be busted.
Okay, I'm just curious.
That wouldn't be that. They wouldn't make that. That wouldn't be fine. They wouldn't make that. They wouldn't have it. We quote unquote scam for cards like this. We play bad cards to make cards like these good.
Don't forget, everything has haste too, so we can attack with this immediately as well.
Yeah.
Because why not? Right?
But yeah. But of course, you broke my brain with the earlier one. But you did tell me some of these are banned. There's probably just one. There's probably one banned card, and all the rest of these are fine just to mess with me.
It's possible. Would I do something like that? No.
Why would this one be banned if the other card was legal? Because, like, it seems easier to play Fenrir to me. It replaces itself completely. The dragon doesn't do that. The graveyard hate thing does seem like a response to the nonsense that people get up to, right? Of, send this to the graveyard, reanimate this, bring this back out of the graveyard. And it's like, they're like, okay, we'll print something that does something about that. That's also attached to a body that also maintains the board. I mean, that seems like a thing that people wanted until they actually got it, maybe. I guess this can target face down ones, right? So there is that, but it sends it to the graveyard. It doesn't banish it face down. So like they probably get more value out of it some way. And then it does only hit light or dark monsters in the graveyard. So it's not like they can't play around the graveyard effect. So I don't think it's oppressive. I think it's stupid. I think in Yu-Gi-Oh! 1, it probably wouldn't last, and I think in other card games it probably wouldn't last. But based on what you've shown me, I'll need a good reason why this had to go but the other didn't, because I don't see it. Unless it's particularly oppressive to a light dark monster deck that uses the graveyard all the time, and if that is true, fuck that deck. It's probably toxic. So yeah, I don't see it after seeing the other one. I'm going to say this one, it's not fine, but I guess it's okay.
Final answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, this card's fine.
Yeah.
Druiswurm's a great card. It's a phenomenal card, actually. It doesn't see play all the time. It really just depends on if there are light or dark decks in the metagame. And there's typically, even if there aren't, there are other cards in the extra deck that you might go into that are light or dark potentially. So, like, there's no shortage of ways to get this guy out onto the field. But, again, a really strong option for to stop your opponent's plays if they are graveyard reliant. And a way to sort of just help you get back into the game, right? It's a big body, 2,500. If it dies, it takes something out with it. Most obviously special summoning isn't special like it used to be. Just like by like modern Yu-Gi-Oh standards, this card is actually, I think a lot of people would think, really well designed. It's I mean, it's good when you have it. You hate when your opponent has it, but that's every card in any card game, right? But it's actually just a fairly good card, and I think everyone's like totally okay with this card. Nothing. It's just a good card. No, not really too oppressive. So you got it. You got one right. Woo!
It's been a long time since I was like 50-50 on a video, so let's go.
All right, let's see if that can continue with this card.
Wait, hold on. Point of contention. Did I get Raigeki right or wrong?
You got it wrong because you said it was banned
a long time ago.
A long time ago. Yep.
Because it's old. Although you said you're showing me new cards. Okay.
Everything else is new. That's the only one that's old.
All right.
Yeah.
Fine. Then we'll just put it like I can feel that things are stacked against me.
When your people comment in the video, they can say you got the point. When my people comment, they say you didn't get the point. Next card.
No, my people aren't watching. I told them not to, and they would only listen to me.
That's true. They only listen to you.
They don't want to see this. Correct. Okay. Yep. Crossout Designator. Who's this anime character? Let's go.
This is actually a guy that's on like multiple card arts. He's from a very old Yu-Gi-Oh card, but they bring him back every once in a while.
Okay, is this an old card?
No. This is new, but the guy on the art has been around for a while.
Just checking.
Yes,
apparently it's like a retrain I have to clarify. All right.
It's like a retrain of an older card. You know, they do that all the time.
Sure. Declare one card name and banish one of that declared card from your main deck, and if you do, negate its effects, as well as the activated effects and effects on the field of cards with the same original name until end of this turn. You'll only activate one Crossout Designator per turn. This is a sorcery?
This is a quick play, which means you can use it at instant.
Where? Oh, I see it. I see it now.
The little lightning bolt symbol.
Yep. Okay.
So you can use this in response to your opponent doing things.
If you do, so you have to banish one of the card from your deck. What if you don't have one in your deck?
I don't know.
So no, if you name the card, it says if you do. So I'm guessing the card does nothing if you declare a card name but search and fail to find. Okay, I'm just making sure.
Yeah,
let's loophole this sucker. It doesn't work as intended. Those cards get banned. Okay. If you do, negate its effects as well as the activated effects and effects on the field of cards with the same original name. This is weird because my very first thought is there's no way they would ever ban this because this is added to the meta to stop the cards that are so ubiquitous that they're in every deck that they probably should have banned. Like, yeah, say it's the one strategy, the one thing, the one greater than all thing, and you run this so that you can go banish a copy out of your deck to keep your opponent from doing the thing as the only way to stop. I don't know, man. That doesn't seem... That doesn't seem right.
Why would I show you this, CGB? Why would I show you
this? That doesn't seem right, though. Let me read this again. If you do, negate its effects, as well as the activate effects and effects on the field of the same original name until the end of this turn. The way I described it, I don't think it's even that good of a solution. It's a solution, but it's not a good solution. You dilute your own deck. Maybe you're playing cards you wouldn't normally play to like maximize this card to hit the right thing, but that doesn't seem great either because then you just draw the card sometimes and it doesn't work with your strategy. That seems bad. Okay, what is scaring me here? What about doing it to your own stuff? What if there's an effect that you want to negate from your own card? Something like, you lose the game. is a line of text that is sometimes on a Magic card that you could negate with a card like this. Some insane upside, like take an extra turn, but then it says at the end of that turn you lose the game, and maybe this negates it. I don't have the context. It is possible. It is definitely possible that there is some combo with this that you build your own deck around that got this in trouble. The fair use, like first use idea of it to attack the opponent's deck doesn't seem great to me. You dilute your own deck to do it. It seems desperate. Surely there are other cards that somehow exist in the game that let you solve these problems in a better way. I'm looking at really proactive solutions in the other cards that you show me, and I'm not sure. And obviously they solve different kinds of problems, but it seems like there's got to be something better. But I am scared of the combo potential of this card, but I don't have the context, so I can't just pronounce this card as banned. I don't think I can. It's an interesting card in its use case, and it's one of those that I think people have to play to find it's not as good as they think it is. And then on the other side, when you're negating your own thing to pull some combo, I think that's a good dream. And maybe it's too powerful, but I don't have the context. I'm going to say not banned.
Okay. I will say, in your defense, I think this was probably the trickiest one. I was seeing if you would pull from the memory of some of our other videos that we've done to put this one together. But that's okay. That's okay. You're correct, though. This card is not banned. Let's give you the context now. So how this card works, and this will also give you some insight into the power level of our game. You remember hand traps, right? The cards that you discard from your hand to stop your opponent from doing something. This card is a counter to those hand traps. So let me explain. Let's say you activate a card, right? Let's just keep it simple. Let's say Pot of Greed. You try to Pot of Greed's banned, but just for this example. You try to activate Pot of Greed to draw 2 cards. Let's say your opponent has an Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. If you recall, that card says anytime your opponent would activate a card to add cards from their deck to their hand, and that includes drawing, you can discard this card to negate that effect, okay? So in response to the Pot of Greed, they would try to use their Ash Blossom to stop you from drawing cards. In response to that, you can activate Crossout Designator because it is a quick play spell, so you can activate it at instant speed. You can banish your own copy of Ash Blossom out of your deck to negate their Ash Blossom to make sure that your Pot of Greed in this hypothetical example resolves. So it's a counter to counters, if you will. And so hand traps, because they are so ubiquitous across all different sorts of decks, even if your main strategy is different, a lot of those other hand traps and such, and other generically good cards, like let's say Raigeki or any of the other more generic cards you've seen, a lot of decks might play these. And so people can play Crossout Designator as a way, as a catch-all to like stop all of these types of effects to make sure that what they're trying to do actually goes through, if that makes sense.
A counter for a counter.
It's a counter for a counter.
Is it
precisely.
good? Is it like as good as people think, like expected it to be? Does it get a lot of play?
It's actually limited in Japan, as a matter of fact. There's another card similar to Crossout Designator called Called by the Grave. It does what this card does a little bit better. That's actually restricted here. I believe it's restricted both here in the TCG and in the Asian territories. Crossout Designator had a lot of hype because it's very similar to that other card. It didn't play out as people wanted it to, I will say. However, it's still a card that will see play from time to time. And there have been moments where this card has single-handedly like won people like tournament championships, because sometimes you can have the read. So for instance, Dimensional Barrier. If you go try to do a play and your opponent activates Dimensional Barrier, if you have a copy of Dimensional Barrier in your deck, you can cross out Designator, call Dimensional Barrier, and now that ensures that Dimensional Barrier doesn't resolve. So it's a, like I said, it's a counter to a counter, right? And people have sometimes had like the forethought to incorporate these different types of specific cards and like 2 levels meta their opponent to make Crossout Designator and use it to its full potential. So it's a very strong card, but I think it requires just a lot of skill to use, if that makes sense.
So I'm hearing that like the hand traps that are good are really good. Like they get played a lot more consistently than maybe monsters of a certain class. Like they're in a lot of decks.
They're basically, for the most part, in every deck in some capacity. Remember your rock, your favorite rock, Nibiru?
Totally.
The big rock that drops out and destroys the whole field, and you get the rock. Remember? Yeah, you liked him.
Yeah.
Another example, right? If you go over 5 summons, your opponent tries to Nibiru and drop the rock, you can cross out Designator, banish a Nibiru from your deck, and now Nibiru won't activate. And so now you protected your board. So a lot of really cool interactions with this card. And like I said, this is more of a tricky one. I think the rest are fairly, a lot easier to pick up on. But I was curious just what you thought about this card all around, because it's a neat design.
I like Nibiru less now that Raigeki's been in my life. I'm going to be honest. Gotta be real.
You could play both. They're both at 3. All right, speaking of 3, only 3 left. And oh boy, I can't wait to see your reaction to this one.
Evenly Matched is a trap card. At the end of the battle phase, if your opponent controls more cards than you do, you can make your opponent banish cards from their field face down so they control the same number of cards as you do. If you control no cards, you can activate this card from your hand. At the end of the battle phase, if they control more cards, so that includes spell cards that stay on the field, trap cards that stay on the field, all of it.
Yep.
And it's banished face down. so they control the same number of cards as you. It says you can make your opponent do it, but I assume it's their choice what they banish if you have one card.
What to banish, correct.
And if you control no cards, you can activate this card from your hand. Activating this card from your hand, does that mean you control nothing?
Correct.
Okay. It's like basically on the stack, like in Magic. It's not on the field, so it doesn't even count as one?
It does count as one.
It does count as one. Okay.
Yeah, so if you do evenly match, they're going to have to banish cards until they have one card left on their field.
It's after the battle phase, at the end of the battle phase. So any like punching your face happened. So it's not like it's, if they're monsters, they get the enter effects. If they're like, what if they're face down like trap cards and stuff?
They'd have to banish those too. Yep.
Okay.
Unless they decide to keep that one of those as their one card. But yes, anything on the field goes for evenly matched.
Yeah, so if they, like, maybe the good situations are, like, they brought out 2 monsters, they placed 2 traps, and then you do this, and none of the traps interact with this, and they go down to 1. And that's good. You get a 3 for 1 on turn 1. Not bad, not bad, not bad. I don't know, man. This seems like good, honest control efforts. That's what it feels like to me.
I thought you would like this card.
Yeah, I mean, why should somebody get to just do all that? There's a card in Magic. It's an old card. It's called Balance. I think I showed it to you in a video.
You did show it to me. That's what actually, I think that was one of the reasons I thought about doing this video, was it reminded me of this card.
Balance, it was great for what it did to creatures. Basically removed all creatures like on the spot, because you would only play it when you had no creatures. But Balance was busted because of what it did to lands and the hand, making the the fact that you could make somebody discard their whole hand and sacrifice all their lands was what made Balance like a bannable card. And it is banned. Yeah, this isn't that.
It's everything but the hand. So to be fair, I mean,
it's not the graveyard either. Yeah, it exiles. It face down exiles, but like you still have access to your yard if you built a big old yard by popping off. This is a nice card to play at the end of a big pop off turn to bring them back to earth, but I'm assuming that current Yu-Gi-Oh gets its value in other ways. I keep on just going back to the first card you showed me. You showed me Fenrir, and it's like they just have another one. Like, what did you do? What have you done? What have you achieved? Like, they just have.
Maybe I shouldn't have started with Fenrir in that case.
They just have another one. So, and this is a trap card where it's like, all right, if this becomes ubiquitous, if this is a common part of the meta, people adapt. And they probably got blown out by it in week 1. And then they started thinking about this if it was getting played a lot. And they started leaving less stuff on the field after the battle phase. And, you know, why just set things? Play hand traps, play less trap cards on the field, I guess. And then the way that meta evolves is people run this less because it's not as effective as it used to be, which then people start building to the board again. They might pick this up and like there's an ebb and flow there. I don't think this card has to be banned. I'm thinking that the way that things currently go, this lets people get enough value out of their cards. It punishes people who play carelessly, and it probably fluctuates in meta and becomes less good as soon as people actually give it respect. So I'm going to say not banned.
All right. Evenly matched is insane. This card is so good. I do not even know where to start with this. So evenly matched, it's kind of hard. With our combo decks will go really wide, where you summon a bunch of guys, you commit a bunch of cards to the field. Yes, in the instance of like Fenrir, you might like add a card back to your hand. But I want to say combo decks, for the most part, are decks that aren't going to play hand traps or things that they want to keep in the hand. Every card is a piece to put on the field and make the field wide and just do a lot of crazy stuff and make it so that the opponent isn't going to be able to like play the game or win through any like meaningful capacity. And a card like Evenly Matched is a great equalizer to this, because what you can do is your opponent can just slam everything down card after card, and then they pass the turn to you. And you say, okay, battle phase. And as soon as your opponent does that without doing anything else, your heart just sinks, because you know exactly what's coming. And what's fun about this is that this actually causes mind games as well. So people will start scrambling because in the battle phase, before they go to the end of the battle phase, the opponent might start just firing off effects because they think their board's going to get hit by Evenly Matched, so they start doing things. And then if they have the Evenly Matched, your whole board gets wiped, and now maybe they have no resources. Or the funnier scenario is they don't have Evenly Matched. They did all these things that they wouldn't otherwise do, and now you can play the game on your second main phase. So psychologically, this card actually adds a really interesting dynamic to the game. And people have been baited by this card numerous times, but it's something that you have to respect because it is in the card pool. In control matchups, if decks are playing a lot of trap cards in the back row, evenly matched can be a way to hose those out as well, right? Because now it's like, oh, good, I'm going to 4-for-1 you with evenly matched. And typically people just play it from the hand. They don't ever set this card face down unless they absolutely have to, just to get the maximum value out of it. But you're correct. This card is at 3. It isn't played all the time. I will say that, just like you said, actually, it sort of ebbs and flows depending on the way that the meta is shaping up. It's seen an uptick in play like relatively recently at the time of recording this, but there have been formats where it's like a game-defining card, and there's other formats where this card's not particularly good because the decks that are the best decks like don't go wide enough for evenly matched to really be worth it. So, phenomenal card. Like it's a great like balancing board-breaking type of card, and people love it.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Punish them.
I thought you would like this one.
Nice job, nerd. You went wide. It's all going away.
It's all going away. Man, when you get evenly matched for like 7, you never forget it. It's awful. All right. 2 left.
Triple Tactics Talent. It's a spell card. And it says, if your opponent has activated a monster effect during your main phase this turn, activate one of these effects. Draw 2 cards. Take control of one monster your opponent controls until end of phase. Look at your opponent's hand and choose one card from it to shuffle into the deck. You can only activate 1 Triple Tactics Talent per turn. This is a spell card. Does this stay on the field?
You activate it, it does the thing, and then it goes to the graveyard.
It's not
continuous.
Okay, not continuous. That's the word I was looking for. And it's flexible. It's got options. If your opponent has activated a monster effect during your main phase. So I have to try to calculate how often and like common and predictable it is that your opponent activates a monster effect during your main phase. I don't know. Is this something that happens every duel? If like assume this card didn't exist or in the before times. Is this a really common occurrence?
Well, you know hand traps exist, so...
I do, but it says monster effect.
Hand traps are monsters. Remember, we call them traps, but they are monsters by nature.
That makes a lot of sense. It's really easy to understand. Okay.
Sorry.
No, it's fine.
It's hand trap because they operate like trap cards.
Okay.
Because you can use them at instant speed.
If we're talking about hand traps that are actually monsters, and this isn't... And many of them are monsters... And
pretty much all of them are. Yep. Remember, we did a whole video on hand traps, if you recall.
Yeah, I didn't remember whether or not they were all monsters. I didn't calculate this into my...
Sorry.
Yeah. No. This is helpful. This is good.
I want to make sure you have the context. Yeah,
so this is pretty normal at this stage. Yu-Gi-Oh! 2 is all about hand monster traps. If that's true, then what you have here is Pot of Greed. Or better, if you think that one of the other... Is it the Dust Shoot or something? What is the card that lets you like look at the opponent's hand and was apparently so powerful for that it got banned?
The one you're thinking of is Trap Dust Shoot.
Yeah.
All 3 of these bullet points are each referencing a banned card. This is not the Trap Dust Shoot, look at your opponent's hand, but this is a different one. I don't think I've showed it to you. So this is all 3 of these bullet points are banned cards. Which is why this card I thought would be very fun to show you. And when people saw this, people were very excited. People were very excited when this card got printed.
I am guessing that a lot of what makes these hand traps so popular is the degeneracy of the format and where it would be without them. So why would you make a card that compounds the degeneracy? They were supposed to keep us safe. And now you're going to give the ones forcing the degeneracy more busted shit? What are they doing?
I cannot begin to tell you how hyped people were when this card got announced. You even understand it. You don't even play this game.
How old is this card?
This was printed, I'm going to double check. It was within the past few years. It's actually quite new. This was printed, 2020 was the first printing. Okay, a little bit older than I thought. Are you doing the test to see if it's old enough to get banned? Is that why you were asking?
Maybe.
Okay. I see you.
All right. If that's such a part of the meta, why wouldn't people run this card? I guess dude, I can't even begin to ask what they're thinking if the meta went this far. Are there decks that don't use hand traps?
Yes, but let me give context to this. So I kind of described earlier with evenly matched. A lot of like combo decks, it's weird because there's a lot of overlap here, but decks that are like strictly considered a combo deck don't play hand traps because every single card in the deck is trying to like achieve some combo. So they choose not to play hand traps because they just assume they don't need those defensive cards to beat the opponent. There are like control decks that play a lot of trap cards and like very few very strong monsters to pair with those trap cards. They might play a couple of hand traps, but like only a select few. But I will say that for the most part, every single deck is playing some quantity of hand traps, and I will give you context. It is anywhere from like 9 to 18 in any given circumstance for the most part.
And your deck size is 40. So one in every opening hand is more than one in opening hand is normal. Okay.
Yes, at least.
And in worst case, you can sideboard this out. He's laughing because that would never happen.
I feel like I've broken you.
The only way that this is fine is if it's the philosophy of everything is busted, so nothing is busted. In a way, this is a green light to print busted hand traps. To like push hand traps further than they were ever pushed before.
Unless they've already been printed. And this is a check to that.
Well, yeah. That's the thing. So you're sitting there. You're the game. You are owner of game. You design game. You ban things in game. You have choices. This hand trap situation has gone crazy. Look at them. They're putting 9 to 18 of them in every deck. Everything's just becoming this cesspool of interaction for nothing. What do we do? Do we ban some of these? Because you don't want maybe there's a fear of making the game just like who has the right hand trap in their opening hand wins, right? Or do we give people a way to recover when they get blown out by the hand trap because somebody had the right hand trap? Do we hook them up with something, rebuild, and keep going so it's not just dead in the water at that phase?
I'll also help you out. Remember, Kashtira Fenrir, we saw him in the beginning. He can use his effect during the opponent's turn to banish stuff face down, right? If you activate something, Fenrir then activates to banish one of your things. So it's not just hand traps. There are monsters that activate on the field at like quick effect speed. So there's even more. Yeah. Correct. Yeah, I want to make sure you had the full scope. Yeah, you getting to play this is normal. That's what I'm hearing. Like, if this is in your hand, it's probably not a dead card for the entire game. My God, draw 2 cards is right there, dude. It's just right there. And this legal has 3 of. Dude, this card looks sick and stupid and absolutely nuts. But is there a world where you have to like actually scale it back? It says you can only activate 1 per turn, right? So if you have 2 or 3 of these in your hand and the opponent does the thing and you play 1 and then these others are stuck, like does it balance itself with 1 per turn in a way that, maybe now you have trouble finding the next window? And here's the other thing. You play one of these and the opponent's like, okay, you can only play 1 of those per turn. So now I'm going to just pop off and play like 2 or 3 more things. While I know you can't use that, another one anyway. Totally on the docket. Pot agreed, no, but I feel like maybe some of these other cards weren't as dangerous as time went on. But God, they're so good. Look at opponent's hand. Take a card. Oh no, they know all my secrets. It's over. Scoop on the spot. You were in awe that Trap Dust Shoot was banned, so remember that.
Yeah, I remember. Just a normal magic card that we print for 1 mana like 50 times, but apparently too good for Yu-Gi-Oh!
I showed that to Voxy recently. Not Trap Dust Shoot, but a card even worse than Trap Dust Shoot, and she had the same reaction you did, that she was speechless that a card like this is banned in our game.
Yeah, we do this all the time, man. In fact, you guys should try it. You should print more of them and do that instead of whatever these hand traps are. It's really fun. God, I don't know, dude. Like, I don't see why they made this. I do. It's money. Money's the answer. They made this for money. But is there a world where this is fine because everything's not fine? Yeah, that world exists. It is obnoxious to think about this being as a 3 of, but it does kind of self-regulate in that way that maybe you draw it at the wrong time after the window's passed, or you draw 3 of them but only get to play 1. So I don't know. I'm gonna, you know what? Fuck it. It's fine. 3 banned cards in 1, and it's fine. Yeah.
Final answer?
Yeah.
You are correct, CGB. This card is legal at 3 copies.
I've learned so much.
You have. You actually figured out the biggest limiter of this card is the fact you can only fire 1 per turn. And that may not seem like as big of a deal as someone who comes from Magic, but in Yu-Gi-Oh!, you never want to have multiples of cards in your hand that have that restriction on them, because that can really make the difference in terms of like how much interaction you have either during your turn or your opponent's. And a lot of hand traps and a lot of cards we've actually seen throughout this video do have that once per turn restriction on them, right? Which is why when you see cards that don't have that restriction, your eyes light up because you're like, oh my God, I could fire multiple of these. They're not dead in my hand. But yeah, the hype surrounding this card when it was first released was insane. Like, people, again, 3 banned cards. Ironically, one of these cards is actually legal again, funny enough. So it's not like, you know, as crazy as it was, but that apparently just shows the way that the game has progressed at this point. It's a phenomenal card. Being able to either just get more cards to keep playing after your opponent hand traps you, to be able to take their biggest threat potentially and use it against your opponent's really big. And looking at the opponent's hand is also really important because you know that hand traps exist. And so being able to not only know what their hand is composed of, but then also take the best card that's going to stop your play, or take out the best card that they have that's going to prevent them from playing, completely dismantle their strategy. All 3 options are used, and all are phenomenal just depending on the circumstances. It may blow your mind to learn that this card has not been like a staple 3 of in every deck since printing. It's a card that, again, it really just depends on like the way that formats play out, because think about like evenly matched, right? That like board breaking sort of card. We kind of go back and forth between are hand traps better or are board breaking cards better? Are the cards better that are going to stop the opponent from doing the thing, or are the cards better that are going to actually dismantle the opponent after they've done the thing? So we kind of go back and forth in between those 2 types of effects, and Triple Tactics Talent falls in the more board breaking type of effect rather than like a hand trap, because you can't use it during your opponent's turn. You have to use it on your own. And so it's for as powerful as it is, you would think every deck would just always run 3 of this until the end of time. Just the way that certain decks function, Triple Tactics Talent may not actually be that good against them. And so, and again, because of the restriction of only being able to use it once, sometimes people will just play a singular copy just so they don't draw multiples. That's happened plenty of times. But insanely good card. And it's people love this card. It's so much fun. It's a great card. It's awesome.
Yeah, I was going to say, why not 1 copy? Probably every deck could go for 1. Yep.
That's something people do. And there's ways to search this card as well, so that if you like are in a situation where your opponent used a monster effect, then you're like, okay, cool, I'm going to use this card to get tactics and then just use it anyway. So you can get away with just having 1, and that's okay sometimes. All right. Last card. This one is going to be quite fun. Let's see what you think about this guy.
Red Eyes.
Bust out the glasses.
I will. Red Eyes Dark Dragoon. This is level 8. All right, off to a great start. Dark Monster. Look at the freaking armor on this weirdo. Oh my goodness. 3,000 attack, 2,500 defense. Spellcaster fusion effect. Dark Magician plus Red Eyes Black Dragon or 1 dragon effect monster.
For the purposes of this, remember a fusion monster, you take 2 guys to make 1. For the purposes of this, assume that this is very easy to make. Just so that's not a limiting factor in your evaluation.
I think I remember the Dark Magician, but sure. Let's go.
That's a very classic card. That's what this is based on.
Cannot be destroyed by card effects. Oh, nice. Neither player can target this card with card effects. Okay. During your main phase, you can destroy 1 monster your opponent controls, and if you do, inflict damage to your opponent equal to its original attack. You can use this effect a number of times per turn, up to the number of normal monsters used as fusion material for this card.
So I'm going to stop you there. Dark Magician and Red Eyes Black Dragon are both normal monsters without effects. So you could use this twice per turn.
Just on right there. Just with the usual pieces twice per turn. Cool. Once per turn, when a card or effect is activated at quick effect, you can discard one card and negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that card. And if you do, this card gains 1,000 attack. What
do you think, buddy?
What a boss. What a boss. Okay. Okay. Can't kill it, destroys everything, counters everything, wrecks everything. That's what I got. Yeah, what an end boss. Oh my god. Not hard to do, you say, huh? Well, this explains why they need all those hand traps.
I'll give you context. So I'll give you context. The way to summon this, there's a card called Red Eyes Fusion. It says send, in short, it says send Dark Magician and Red Eyes Black Dragon from your deck to the graveyard and summon this thing.
Nice. How nice. I imagine that's free.
The only downside to it is you're not allowed to summon the remainder of the turn. I'm sorry, at all. This is like the only summon you're allowed to perform for the turn.
What more could you need? Oh, okay. Wow, big downside there. Wow, yeah, what a punishment. You mean you have no friends when you're this freaking elite? Correct. You have no friends when you're this good.
He stands alone.
Yeah, you got your own table at the cafeteria. Probably fine. Nah, I mean, this is why they got to do it, right? This is why they got to interrupt everything. This is why you have cards in your card pool like Dimensional Barrier, and it's totally fine.
Is that what you've been missing? Have you been missing the why this whole time?
Not really. I just assume it's degenerate.
Asking.
And it is.
Okay. Sure.
Surprise. Sure. I assume that if they get to do the thing, either they're going to do like 15 things that chain together and win the game, or they're going to bring out the one thing that's unkillable that wins the game. Because it's always one of the two. It's either the one big thing or the 50 things. I would like this.
As a control player. This is a great control card.
It's a combo card, right? Like, you got to sneak it out. This is... In Magic, the control decks don't play creatures unless they're going to come out and then slowly accrue value and slowly, carefully win the game. This just comes out and like sticks it right to them. It ends the game too brutally quickly, which is why it's more of a cheated out kind of card, which is why it screams combo to me. In Magic, we try to cheat these out early because they can't be dealt with.
We don't have to cheat them out. We just play them, you know?
I'm remembering the cards you showed me that let you tribute the opponent's stuff.
Okay. Yeah.
And that is a way out of this.
That is.
So that exists, and it's increased in popularity for some reason, as we discussed in those videos.
Some reason. Can't imagine why. Why.
I'm guessing these lines of text about can't be targeted, can't be dealt with aren't even that rare. I bet some big thing. I bet they're printing more of that on big things like this, just so that people have a reason to play it at all. Like that.
Interesting.
Yeah. That's my guess.
In Magic, like there isn't. How do I describe this? On like larger creatures in Magic, like wouldn't you want those types of protection effects so your big guy sticks? Yeah, okay.
Oh, we've got a lot of names for it. Hexproof, Shroud, Ward. We've created a lot of different ways to like have your big creature that you go through so much work to get actually do something. But as long as there are things in the card pool and Magic sacrifice, exile all kind of things, then those cards don't usually need to be banned. They just dictate which colors actually have good answers and how players have to play certain colors. There are examples where, sure, the things got banned, but I think for the most part, that is rare nowadays that something gets banned for being a giant monster that's hard to kill. And yeah, this card seems oppressive and horrific. And if there are answers to it in hand traps or in, ways to tribute it and things like that, like all it takes is too many people running this deck and other people will pack all the answers. So I'm going to say it's fine.
You've just given up. You're throwing your hands over your head.
No, it's not that. It's like I'm looking at the other things. Like, yeah, this card is amazing. I could read the whole thing again. I've forgotten half of what it does already. You could read the whole thing, but it's all tied into this one thing. And what I am seeing, what these cards are all saying to me is that you don't just get to do the one thing, that there are answers to everything at all kinds of rates right now. And that is why some of these things can be so insanely busted and be fine. So I'm sticking with it.
Well, this card was banned.
Okay, great.
In the Asian territories. It's legal in the TCG.
Well, it balances out, doesn't it? I think that we should go back at this point to only allowing bans in the TCG is the way that I see the situation. I think that it makes sense now that we've had this talk.
I see. So let me give some context with Dragoon here. People were very excited when this card got announced. It's like a retrain. It's Yugi and Joey from the anime. It's like they're two ace monsters fused into one. So it's like every anime lover's dream, right? And plus he looks badass at the end of the day.
Yes.
So very hyped card. It's funny that you said that like control decks in Magic wouldn't play something like this because on release, there was a very popular control deck at the time called Eldritch. And Eldritch would actually play Dragoon because this is very much a control card in the sense that it is a thing that can negate any card or effect your opponent is using at the cost of discarding a card. This control deck also did play out of the graveyard to an extent because it's like a zombie-based trap archetype that's very controlling. They would have a bunch of cards to control the board, and then this was kind of like their secondary alternate boss monster, if you will, because Eldritch himself is a monster that deck would... Yeah, so like cards like this in control decks are actually not that rare by Yu-Gi-Oh! Standards, especially if they want to compete in a modern setting. By old Yu-Gi-Oh! Standards control, you probably wouldn't, something like this one wouldn't exist, but like you probably wouldn't play monsters. I would agree with you. But as Yu-Gi-Oh! Has aged, something like this slots very nicely into that deck because that deck doesn't care about losing out on the summon. That deck can afford to play all the pieces, and there's like no downside to it really, so it's kind of like, why the hell not, right? There were ways that made this even more degenerate because there was a card that could copy the effect of the fusion card and basically bypass like the restrictions, so then you got to do your thing and then play Dragoon in addition to everything else, so it was even more oppressive as a result of that. Phenomenal card. They ended up banning that combo piece instead of banning Dragoon. And Dragoon is, it was, like I said, it was banned. It was, a lot of people wanted it banned, and they just kind of banned like the more degenerate aspect of it. They banned it in the Asian territories. I think they actually just restricted it in like the last like one or two lists that came out, so they can play with it again. I think the more like degenerate aspects of the card have been sort of put in check. It's kind of funny because as the game has just, like you said, there's just answers to it, and not that answers existing means that a card is healthy, but there's just enough things that kind of just deal with it that it's like, it's really good, but at the same time, yeah, like that's just kind of like the way it is. So that's Yu-Gi-Oh! 2 for you at the end of the day. What do you think?
I feel like I understand it better than whatever Yu-Gi-Oh! Mid or Yu-Gi-Oh! 1 is.
Yeah?
I don't know. You tell me. I think I did better on this video than I have in the last couple.
I think you did, which is kind of impressive because I thought like these recent ones, you'd be knocking it out of the park, and you've been completely going in the opposite direction.
Thank you. Yep. Yeah, I like that we brought that up. That feels good.
Well, because of course they're not going to watch it, right? But I think you went like 60 or 70% correct on this video, which is kind of impressive. So congrats on that.
Thank you. Ta-ta! Maybe Yu-Gi-Oh! 2 is what's really right for me.
You would never play that.
No, I wouldn't. Ever.
So guys, that's going to wrap it up for another video. I really hope you all enjoyed. Let's go ahead and shout out the patrons for all of their continued support. So shoutouts to Shoutout1317, Tim00x3, MBT Play Medolce, Moto, Cameron L. Smith, The Synchro Guy, Pony Stark, Dan the Man Hoban, Little Fadeleaf, Draconic, Dylan Rare Hunter, Brian Dancer of Class 7, JW11860, Flannel Daddy, literally all of the guinea pigs, Cheeks McLapperty, Stolfin Amethyst, MBT Cancel Bio Community soon, Cancel Bio Committee soon, Cancel Bio Player soon, Wonder Waffle, Daniel Howell, Electrician of the Ice Barrier, Arco, and Astro Random. Thank you all so much again for watching, and we will see you next time.